Peace and love, everyone, and welcome back to another Sunday Hope and Healing session. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, and we're back happy to bring more encouragement, more love, more hope, more healing into every aspect of your lives. We do that through insights that we share verbally from things that have unfolded on my own journey through life, and things that I've gained in my journey that I want to that have been a blessing to me that I want to impart and share with others that you might be able to utilize them in yours as well. And we also utilize a methodology of healing referred to as transcending the matrix, which is a holistic approach to healing that looks at the totality of a person's being spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so we're here today, and my plan is to not be on long today. I will confess that I need some rest. I was up all night preparing for really ultimately doing some inner work in preparation for when I was speaking this morning at Transforming Love Community. But greetings to all of you who are out there today. Feel free to drop a hello in the comments. It's always a blessing to know who it is that's with us. And so thank you in advance for that. And so our topic for today's Sunday Hope and Healing session, I wouldn't call this a part two from when I was speaking earlier today. It's in a way kind of its own thing. Greetings, Curly Conscious King. Good to see you in the space today. And thank you for that as well. It's not really a part two of earlier today, but it is somewhat related. And so our topic for today's Sunday Hope and Healing session is something that was actually, the name was kind of inspired by years ago when I went through this program called Landmark. Did this program called Landmark, and I remember something being said in this program talking about being authentic about your inauthenticity. Right, that's what our topic for today is: being authentic about your inauthenticity. Okay, facts. There are ways in which you're not completely authentic, and there are ways that you're not really completely true to who it is that you actually are. Sometimes we behave in certain ways saying, I'm just being me, I'm just doing me. But that's not you being authentic. Sometimes that's just you using that as an excuse to behave however the heck that you want to behave. um, Put another way, sometimes that's just an excuse for your ego to do what it wants to do. Okay, independent of you being true to your true self. Okay, now that doesn't mean that we don't have some areas of our lives that aren't quite as wonderful as we would like for them to be. There are some thoughts and feelings that we might have going on deep down inside that might be what our authentic feeling is, even though we might actually behave differently than what it is that we're feeling, or we might say differently than what it is that we're feeling, or we might even, for many of us who are on a spiritual path, we might even deny within ourselves that we have these different things going on. We might deny in ourselves that we're feeling whatever it is that we're feeling, or that we're bothered by something that we somehow think that we shouldn't be bothered by. And so there's an aspect to that in terms of authenticity. But another very important component of authenticity as well is being true to who you really, really, really are. And so a lot of times we end up engaging in life in a way that is either consciously or subconsciously manipulative behavior. Okay. Manipulative behavior, and a lot of, and really, quite frankly, a lot of what we focus on as people, a lot of time is on modification of behavior, which is different than actually resolving the actual issue. In relationships, we end up getting, regardless of what the relationship is, whether it's a parent-child relationship, amongst siblings, amongst coworkers, um, or boss and employee, whatever the relationship, certainly amongst romantic relationships, regardless of what the relationship is, a lot of times we end up uh, focusing on behavior modification. There's something that somebody is, there's some behavior that somebody is engaging in that we don't like how it makes us feel. And so we want them to change the behavior, or we don't want them to behave a certain way. And the way that that shows up sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes, is us being controlling of another person, flowing within their free will as they see fit, when their free will doesn't speak to what the experience that we want to have with them actually is. And so we end up putting parameters around what's acceptable behavior for other people. And if they don't live up to that, we make them pay a consequence for that. That's not quite the same thing as establishing healthy boundaries, because healthy boundaries do need to be established as well. But a lot of times we focus on the effect and we don't focus on the cause. We focus on that in terms of healthcare, and we prescribe medications and perform surgeries to get rid of symptoms, but don't really address the underlying root cause of that symptom. That's again what we really focus on in transcending the matrix, is what is that root cause that is creating this pain. Even if a person actually experienced an accident, a physical trauma to the body, what is the deeper underlying thing that caused that to happen? The deeper underlying subconscious thing that caused that to happen, in order to bring attention to this deeper issue that was needing to be resolved in the first place. And this injury just happened as an excuse, if you will, to cause you to focus on the thing that you really needed to focus on. The reality of the way most humans go through life is we still don't focus on what it is that we need to focus on, because we're generally focused externally on what somebody else out there needs to be doing, rather than what we in here have going on and what we need to be resolving within ourselves. At the end of the day, it's all an inside job. It's all inner work that we need to be doing. It's all inner work that we need to be doing. And so, yes, it's important for you to be able to be authentic, but for you to really be authentic, you've got to be authentic about your inauthenticity, about the ways that you're not being authentic. And so there's this movie, um, I may have mentioned it recently on a broadcast, a movie called I Heart Huckabees. I Heart Huckabees. And actually, there are quite a few noted people who are in it. Um, Dustin Hoffman, Lily Tomlin, uh, uh, Mark Wahlberg, Jude Law, Jason Schwartzman. Uh, Man, I forget the lady's name that's in it. I don't recall her name off the top of my head. Um, and there is a point where two of the characters, who consider themselves to be existential investigators, I think, is the title that they go by. There's a couple played by Dustin Hoffman and Lily Tomlin. And there's a point where something happens, and then they go into this like a whole other space, and they are like questioning themselves. They're saying it out loud, but they're reflecting at the same time they're saying it. And both of them are doing this. And the question that they're posing to themselves is, how am I not myself? How am I not myself? Right? There are ways in which all of us aren't really being ourselves. And the reason that we aren't being ourselves is because we don't always know who it is that we really are, even in the first place. Okay. And because we have, in some ways, been socialized to engage in um, what's essentially manipulative behavior to be able to have the least resistance from other people, and to set ourselves up the best way we know how to have the greatest likelihood of experiencing what it is that we're wanting. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, because a lot of times sometimes it's what it is that we're wanting, or actually even genuinely authentically needing, and sometimes it's just what our ego is desiring, and we end up kind of um, manipulating situations and sometimes even people to increase what we believe will be our likelihood to have what it is that we want. And as Abraham frequently shares, the only reason that we want anything is because we think that having it will make us feel a certain way. That we think the having of that particular thing will make us feel a way that we want to feel, or that we believe we want to feel. All right. So let me share this with you real quickly. You learn essentially from birth how to be inauthentic, because you didn't really have ways of necessarily expressing your needs in a way that was guaranteed to get them, other than the ways that you started doing without the gift of speech to do it in the first place. And then so you started learning very early in life how to kind of bend the world to your will to create the greatest likelihood based on what your understanding was of how you could get your needs met, whatever those needs might be. And let me say this, all of us have genuine, authentic needs. All of us, every single one of us has genuine, authentic needs. And it doesn't make us bad that we have needs. It doesn't make us bad that somebody else isn't able to actively participate in helping us to experience the fulfillment of those needs. And nor does it make them bad that they aren't able to, that they genuinely aren't able to meet our needs as we deem them to be. All right. The key isn't in browbeating or trying to manipulate somebody else into being something other than who they authentically are, so you can get what it is that you think you authentically want or feel like you actually need. The key is being authentic enough within yourself to align yourself with the places and spaces where your authentic needs can actually be met, which is a very different thing than trying to control another person, which all humans are actually masters of. Trying to, we all have an inner control freak where we're trying to control external circumstances. You have children in school, they're, you know, maybe having a little bit of difficulty paying attention, or may have a little extra energy that they may not have a whole lot of, ways in which to channel it. The learning environment might not necessarily be conducive to their particular learning style or to their level of energy. And so we end up endeavoring to modify their behavior by putting them um, on medication that will calm them down, chill them out, make our life a little bit easier. And I'm speaking as a person who spent years in the classroom with children, with students, every grade from K through 12. Okay. And some of those were were folks who had special needs. Some of those were folks um, who were in special education classes. Some of those were folk who were in alternative education schools. Some of those, were just what we would typically consider normal. And it can be difficult. We have situations with children. We don't necessarily know how to speak to where it is that they are, and they're acting out a certain way. We get on them and try to control their behavior, try to modify their behavior without really clearly understanding what the unrecognized need is. And so we end up teaching them it's not okay to be who you are. It's not okay to be who you are is not okay with me. Who you are, as you are, it makes me feel uncomfortable and I don't like it. And so that's what we do to each other. Okay. And as a result of that, we end up learning that if we're going to get by in life, we've got to behave a certain kind of way. And if we're going to behave and this is very, 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 very painful to the soul. Anytime that we are abandoning ourselves, our uppercase S, selves, anytime we are abandoning our authentic truth, anytime we're operating in the total opposite direction of who we genuinely, authentically are, it's incredibly painful for the soul. And yet, operating in who we genuinely and authentically are can result in us experiencing pain in our body and pain socially from the responses that we get from other people, the whatever way that they may respond to us, or we might end up feeling like folk are only around because of what it is that we do for them rather than who it is that we are. And so as long as we're meeting their desire of how they want us to participate in their life, they're cool with us. As long as we're feeding them what it is that they want to be fed, they're cool with us. But if we've got something that genuinely, authentically leads us in a different direction, for us to be genuinely true to ourselves, that can at times be met with a lot of negativity and can result in love end up being withheld from us. Okay. Now, in response to that, what we end up doing typically is we end up changing who it is that we are or how we operate so that we don't end up having that feeling, or we go the exact opposite direction. And because again, the soul doesn't like this, and then we act the way that we know somebody doesn't want us to act as a retaliation, even if that isn't really what's authentic for us either. Okay. And so we end up we find ourselves in spaces that allow us to be parts of ourselves that we want to be. It might not even be the best part of ourselves that we want to be. It might be a part of ourselves that we're not challenged. It might be a part. Let me speak on that for a moment in terms of where we're not challenged. Because a lot of times, those of us who talk about somebody else not wanting to be challenged, a lot of times those same people aren't wanting to be challenged themselves, and they're projecting something onto somebody else. Okay. And so I'm very passionate about healing, and I'm also very passionate about the wholeness of humanity. And for me to be passionate about the wholeness of humanity, I have to also be passionate about relationships and the various and sundry forms that relationships take on, right? The different types of relationships, how we interact and relate with one another. And a lot of times we're not interacting in the context of relating, we're operating in the context of irritating. Okay. And a lot of our engagement is based on a power dynamic where we're not wanting somebody else to have power over us, and that we think a lot of times that the way that we keep somebody else from having power over us is having power over them. But let me submit to you today that there's no such thing as having power over another person. That's not power. Now, you can definitely influence a person to behave the way that you want them to behave sometime based on the way that you might operate in your interactions with them. You may be able to influence them, but that ain't having power over them, because power isn't something that you have over another being. Power is something that you have over your own lower nature. And if you don't have, if you're not able to operate in your truer self, then you're not operating in power. You're operating in your ego, and the ego doesn't really have any power in and of itself except to keep you distracted from what's really real. And so, I can go down a whole rabbit hole with this. I'm on an endeavor to hold my mule. But what we're essentially getting at is being authentic about your inauthenticity. I didn't sleep last night. Well, I got to sleep about 5 o'clock this morning, and then I was up, up by 8. But I wasn't asleep yet at 5, and wasn't still asleep at 8. And in this process, I'm really dealing with myself on this, because if we're really going to be serious about really being whole, about really experiencing the fullness of who it is that we are and who it is that we're called to be, if we're really serious about really being on a spiritual journey and developing spiritual maturity, then it requires some deep introspection. It really requires us looking at ourselves, going within, doing the inner work, the inner healing. And if it's not inner healing, it isn't really healing. It's just rearranging deck furniture on the Titanic. Okay. You're making things look, kind of cool on the outside, but it's not really changing what's going on the inside. And what's going on the inside is ultimately where there's either health or lack thereof. Right. And so you can do all of these things to change what your body looks like on the outside. You can put makeup on, you can get implants, you can get Botox, you can put on fancy clothes, but if there's still darkness in your soul, that doesn't alleviate any of that. It just serves as a mask for it, in the same way that painkillers serve as a mask for the pain that's going on, when really all it's done is made you numb to the pain that's actually there, and switched off a receptor in your brain for you to recognize and register the pain that's there. And so then you become less in touch with what's really actually going on inside of you. And a lot of times we're quick to focus on some external thing to keep from focusing on what's really going on inside. Now, I would tell you unapologetically, I am not feeling full of energy right now. I'm just not. That's just the truth of the situation. I'm not feeling full of energy right now, because I was up really dealing with me, and not just dealing with me, but looking at how we as humans are, because I really, really want to contribute to the elevation of consciousness of my people. Right. That's something that's very important to me. That's something that's very important to me. And I know that the more healed and the more whole we all are, the better it is for all of us, even though us getting healed sometimes triggers other people's desire to stay where they are because their ego doesn't want to face its own destruction. And sometimes when you're in the midst of change, that's why if you're going through recovery from addiction, they tell you that you have to change your support system. If you're an alcoholic, you can't be hanging out with your friends in the bar. That's just not going to do it. However, if you decide that you want to get clean, it may trigger something in the folks who feel like they still want to keep doing what it is that you all have always been doing. If they're people who are operating in a low vibrational frequency and you start to elevate your frequency, sometimes they could begin to see you as a threat and then may lash out at you in order or in an attempt to try to keep you with where they are because they don't yet feel ready or aren't yet choosing to do that work for themselves so that they can grow and be a better version of themselves. And so they may project some of that negativity onto you. And so then what might you do? You might choose to kind of placate in some ways, or you might choose to separate yourself from them until you find a new tribe, if you will. Right? I think the reasonable vote is for the latter. Find a group that supports where it is that you are now, and even beyond that, where it is that you're looking to go. And then when you get there, do your best to allow them to be a source of inspiration to you rather than you being one who endeavors to try to lower their vibration so that you don't feel uncomfortable. Here's a reality, folks. Life isn't supposed to feel comfortable. Life isn't supposed to feel comfortable. Now, we don't like uncomfortability. Oh Lord, it doesn't feel good. We like to stay in our little comfort zone. We are, a lot of times, just as humans in general, a lot of times we're good in spaces where we can get away with not being held accountable. And as a matter of fact, because we don't really want to be held accountable, we support those who are operating in their delusion sometimes because they are enabling for us. They're enabling for us. We don't have to grow in the presence of those who are choosing not to grow and who are encouraging us to stay where it is that we are, because in all likelihood, that's where it is that they are and where it is that they choose to stay at the time being, right? And so we a lot of times gravitate towards those. They say that you are the 5 people you feel most comfortable with. And when you look at the 5 people that you feel most comfortable with, how many of them are encouraging you to be better than they are? How many of the people that you feel most comfortable with are encouraging you, are pouring into you to be better than they are, while at the same time doing their absolute best not to be better than you are, but to be better than they were yesterday, right? A lot of times we get into this competition thing. And we think that we're competing with other people, and we feel good about ourselves if we beat somebody else or we do better than somebody else. But the reality of the matter is that the one that you really ought to be competing with is whoever you were yesterday. May who you are today be better than who you were yesterday. And then when tomorrow comes, rinse and repeat, right? All right. And so I'm going to take just a few minutes and we're going to do some healing in terms of this being authentic about our inauthenticity, and maybe doing a little healing as it relates to the inauthenticity and trauma that we might face with times where we have been authentic in the past and it was met with maybe even, various forms of attack from other people, right? And really what I want to say is even the attacks that you might experience from other people in your attempt to delve into a greater degree of authenticity, being a truer version of yourself, that even that attack that you're experiencing from the outside, that's really just a part of your own ego that isn't ready for the change yet. Okay. That's just a part of your own ego that isn't ready for the change yet. And if you can push past that, then it'll be wonderful, tremendous growth that you'll be able to experience. Okay. And then when you really are greater and greater in that realm of really being true about wanting your growth, about wanting to be the best version of yourself, then the people who placate you and the people who don't hold you accountable and who enable you, you won't feel the same level of attraction to them or to being with them. You'll want them to be able to speak the truth to you in love, not being just harsh with it and they see something and they put it in a way that's, that can be kind of damaging, but they're speaking a truth that they see from a genuine heart-centered space, and they're speaking real authentic knowledge that is filtered through love. Okay, so that what comes from their heart might land in your heart and be received in a loving way. Okay, in a loving way, not in terms of wrong making or casting blame, but from a space of genuine compassion, sharing this is what I see, and this might be something worth looking at. Right. Okay, so let's get into some healing. I'm going to start with a little prayer, and then we'll go into the healing, and we'll do a few corrections, and then I'm going to close it out for today. God, I know you to be a healer. And I give great thanks for the blessing and the privilege of being able to participate with you in your healing power and demonstrate you as a healer. On the behalf of Royce Fletcher Thomason, and you say your name, whatever your name is, whoever it is that's stating their name, for the purpose of neutralizing the root cause of all inauthenticity from the entire energetic structure of every strand of DNA in every cell of each of our respective bodies, and transmuting that into and replacing it with being true with ourselves about ourselves. By being truly honest with ourselves about ourselves and rising victoriously above the fear, the guilt, the shame, into joy, love, fulfillment, and genuine, authentic empowerment to be the best versions of ourselves, that also gives other people that we encounter permission to be the best versions of themselves. And I bear witness to our wholeness on this date and in this time and space called now, God. Thank you. Thank you for this gift of your divine love. It's done. It is done. It is done. All righty. So let's Hmm. In terms of, let's look at fear of seeing the less than beautiful aspects of ourselves, fear of seeing the ugly in us. Mm. All of us have some things about us that we have some things about us that are absolutely wonderful and beautiful, and we have some things that are just kind of stink. Um, it doesn't make you a bad person that you got some stanky ways, or there's some stanky aspects of your expression, your attitudes, your way of seeing things, your way of doing things. We just want to resolve that. Okay. And so let's look at self judgment. That's not coming up so much as an issue of fear of being judged by others because of how we've been judgmental of others. Ooh, that definitely came up as a big issue. So let's bring some resolve to that, shall we? Ah, welcoming in the pure love and divine light of God to fill those spaces and places within our consciousness and also within our cellular structure. All right, transmuting that into being able to be casual observers of our inner life. Casual, objective observers of our inner life. So you're able to look at it and see it. You don't have to. You don't have to develop all of these feelings about it necessarily in terms of how you feel about yourself um, being somehow unworthy or inadequate or anything like that. But it's really just part of being human. And some of these things were learned behaviors. Now, we're not taking that and using that as an excuse. Some of these things are things that were just kind of passed down from generation to generation, levels and degrees of brokenness. And it doesn't feel good to look at that, but let's strengthen us to be able to see it for what it is and to expose it to the light of God's truth and the light of God's love to be transformed. That we might be transformed by the renewing of our minds, that we might be transformed by the purifying of our hearts. All right. All right. And so now let's look at strengthening. Actually, let's look at kind of breaking down the ways in which we're judgmental of other people. And so the judgment that we have towards other people isn't about other people. When we're being judgmental towards other people and we're trying to manipulate other people, that is painful to our souls. That's painful to our souls. It isn't as painful what somebody else did to us. That isn't as painful to our souls what somebody else did to us as the pain that we feel in our souls or how we have treated ourselves and how we've treated other people. So we're going to resolve that and offer some self-forgiveness. Okay. Let's offer some self-forgiveness for the times that we blame somebody else for our own stuff. Those times have been aplenty. All right. So let's look at neutralizing our tendency towards projecting our own stuff on other people and replace that with seeing other people as a mirror for ourselves, reflecting how it is that on some level we're seeing ourselves. And choosing not simply to clean up the mirror, but choosing to clean up who's in the mirror, who is us, right? And really allow space for our own cleansing. All right. And willingness. So there's a part of us that feels a sense of guilt and shame, and we're attracted to that which is dirty because we think that we are dirty subconsciously on some level. And so on some level, we want what's pure. We want to be that ourselves, but we somehow feel like we fall short of that or feel inadequate. And then that makes us feel some kind of way about ourselves, and also makes us feel some kind of way about those who are demonstrating that in a way that we feel like we aren't, or a way that we think on some level that we aren't. Okay. And so let's now boost our ability to see the pure version of ourselves and embrace that. And wait a minute, even before I get into that, to see the impure version of ourselves and love that to wholeness. Not enable it, but love it to wholeness. Some love needs to show up as tough love sometimes. Some love needs to show up as accountability. Not in terms of punishing, but in terms of accountability. All right. There are some things I have in my life had to come to terms with that I was in denial about, where I had to hold myself accountable. All right. So let's look at, and I encourage you to do the same. So we're strengthening all of us to be able to embrace accountability. And sometimes we take stuff from other people. We don't hold other people accountable because we don't want to be held accountable. And sometimes we hold other people accountable. We call it holding other people accountable when we're actually just focusing on them getting right, so we don't have to focus on us getting right. All right. So let's look at embracing that the quickest path to getting others right is getting right within ourselves. Even though that's not even when we're getting right within ourselves, the goal doesn't have to be getting other people right. Okay. But we no longer feel that same need to attract the kind of behavior that we've been previously attracting. All right. Thank you, God. All right. Now let's look at our own stubbornness. I want to look at our stubbornness in the context of our need to be right. Our need to be right connected to fear of our inadequacy. We've had times in the past where we thought that our being right was able to protect us. There are times that we operated in genuine insight and intuitiveness when we felt that something wasn't right, and we honored it, and it did keep us safe. And there have also been times where we called something our intuition when all it really was our comfort zone, our comfort level. And so something felt scary. It felt like a threat. There was actually something that was healthy, but because we hadn't yet developed that comfort level with that level of healthiness, it felt scary or it felt threatening. And so we may have gone a different direction. Okay, so ability to see clearly what is good for us and what is not good for us, and to walk in the path of what is good for us. Okay, so that requires some purification. It requires some purification of our heart, also some purification of our minds. Okay. And it requires some purification of our eyes, how it is that we're seeing things, because we tend to see things through the filters of our experiences. And a lot of those experiences have been negative experiences that have kind of tainted us, have tainted our vision, have tainted our perspective. Right. All right. So let's look at the fear of the unknown. Ooh, that's a big issue. All right, so let's resolve this fear of the unknown as it relates to this whole being authentic about our inauthenticity. You know, they say that some folks say ignorance is bliss. Ignorance can be a part of your comfort zone. And I'm not condemning anybody for wanting to stay in your comfort zone, because it does not feel good to always be out operating outside of your comfort zone. But I can say I'm so thankful that I've been blessed to experience some of the really deep transformational growth that I've experienced in my lifetime because of my willingness to be uncomfortable and my willingness to look at things that didn't feel comfortable to look at and deal with things that didn't feel comfortable to deal with. And I'm not telling you that I do that in every situation, but there have been a lot of times where I've fortunately, um, you know, by the grace of God, found the intestinal fortitude to face a lot of things that I didn't feel comfortable facing, but that needed to be faced. Okay. And there's still plenty more for me, and I'm sure for you as well. All right, so let's strengthen our faith in God, to know that even though we might go through the fire, that God will be with us, even though we might have to face this difficult thing that feels very uncomfortable and maybe even feels very scary, but to know that God is with us and we're going to make it out of it okay, that we're going to make it out of it better than we were before. Okay. All right. All right. Now let's look at also, so I want to take a moment now and let's look at breaking old cycles, intergenerational cycles of ancestral trauma that's been passed down from one generation to another. And not just ancestral trauma, but ancestral coping mechanisms for the trauma that result in us acting out in certain ways that aren't healthy. All right. And so even as we're healed, it's actually bringing some healing to our ancestors before us as well. Those who are no longer even in a body, the healing can heal the bloodline, going backwards and going forwards. Okay. All right. Thank you, God. Okay. I'm going to do 2 more, 3 of the most, and then we're out of here for today. Okay. So I'm looking at anxiety and depression. Okay. Looking at anxiety and at depression in the context of us time traveling. So anxiety is usually dealing with what's going to happen, our thoughts about what's going to happen. And depression usually deals with our thoughts about what has happened, right? What's already taken place. Okay. And then we end up having a difficult time being present in the present moment and the gift that the present moment has. And so let's look at neutralizing some that tendency for time traveling, whether into the past or the future, and all of the stuff that we have going on about what happened in the past or what we think will happen in the future, and transmute that into and replace it with knowing that the past is the past. The past is gone, actually. It no longer exists except for us to keep feeding it energy. And the future, to know that our future is safe. To know that our future is safe. And that we are safe in our future. So we don't have to worry about the future or what's going to come tomorrow or the next day or the next moment, but able to enjoy the beauty of the present moment. Or even the challenge of the present moment, whatever it is that's going on in that moment. Whatever that moment may be and whatever that moment may bring. Okay. All right, now I want to take a moment and look at strengthening our overall courage. Okay. Courage isn't really the absence of fear so much as it is facing the fear or whatever might be coming up in the midst of it, and courageously moving forward, going forward, despite whatever that issue might be or might appear to be. Okay, thank you, God. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me take a moment now and just kind of as more of a general correction or general clearance. Kind of neutralize and delete the memories of negative experiences that we've had and negative programming that we've had, that it's wrong for us to be ourselves, and transmute that into divine knowledge of self and a vigilant determination to develop true knowledge of self and to live out to really enjoy the art of living. All right. So on that note, God, thank you for the healing that's taken place thus far within all of us, for the blessing of being able to become a little bit more free, to be authentic about our inauthenticity, that we might be more authentic wholly. Thank you for the blessings that we bring into the lives of other people by our willingness to be who it is that we truly are, as well as the blessing that it brings to us and to the planet. Thank you for these and all of the other blessings. Ashe and amen. All right, beloved. Well, that pretty much wraps us up for today. I bid you adieu I look forward to seeing you next time. If you at all are interested in learning more, um, if you want to actually come on live and experience some healing, that's actually how we started this 4 years ago, or over 4 years ago when we first started doing this. Reach out to me at Royce Fletcher Thomason. I got the wrong one up. Reach out to me at Royce Fletcher Thomason or Transcending the Matrix on Facebook or Instagram, or if you're not already subscribed to the Matrix Healing, one word, Matrix Healing YouTube page, I encourage you to do so. We really, and do me a favor, as a matter of fact, if you're not already subscribed, go and subscribe. And after this video is over, leave a comment about one thing that one area where you would like to be more authentic. Okay. And if there's a particular topic that you'd like for me to address after the broadcast, drop that in. I say after the broadcast because the live comments disappear after the live is over. They don't still show up. But leave in the comments about something that you'd like us to focus on in terms of some healing. And we'll be glad to do that. So that again wraps us up for today. If you feel blessed by this, and you want to sow into what it is that we're doing, you're certainly welcome to do that. You can do so via Cash App at Royce F. Thomason. And if you feel like somebody else will be blessed by this video, please share it with them and tell them why it is that you're sharing it with them. I know I say this all the time, and I do see where people share it, but they just share the video. They don't say anything about it. And so people have no idea why they're sharing it. And because they have no idea why they're sharing it, they don't end up watching the video that the person shared. But at any rate, God bless you. I love you. And I pray for you bountiful, bright blessings as we endeavor to enter into that sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. And with that, I bid you adieu with peace and love. Catch you next time.